Though the city of Gretna is nearly as old as this century, that does not loom large in the story of the cities of mankind, little more than a normal human lifespan. So it is that in this small city, there remain men and women whose living memories reach back to the founding of Gretna and to those men who made possible its birth and its growth. Men and women who can speak of my father, the mayor. For nearly a third of Gretna's history, its mayor was its doctor, Charles F. Gelb. What memories do you have of being a young girl, the daughter of a doctor?
Well, we lived at home where he had his office, and I know he could never eat a meal without being interrupted. He would go all night as well as all day. Come home sometimes so tired that he'd fall asleep on the porch in a rocking chair. He delivered many, many babies. I'm at the Chateau Notre Dame now, and a maintenance man came in the other day, and he said, "Did you get the clipping I sent you?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "Are you from Gretna?" Because it was not in the New Orleans papers. And he said, "Yes." I said, "Did you know my father, Dr. Gelb?" He said, "Dr. Gelb, he brought me into the world." And I'm running into that so many, many times now that I'm back in this part of the country.
Where did your father learn medicine?
Where did he what?
Learn medicine?
At Tulane, and then he interned at Charity Hospital. And he was on the original board, I think, of the Baptist Hospital, but the Gretna people found the new Baptist Hospital too hard to get to, so he did most of his practicing then at Mercy Hospital.
How did he get from medicine to be mayor?
Well, he always loved politics, and he always loved people, and he saw so many things that needed to be done in Gretna that he really worked to try to improve conditions here. And he did do many things. He was the one who instituted the water and sewage system. They had just opened ditches when I was a child. And he had brought the street lights and paved the sidewalks, but most of all, he was interested in getting good, clean water because the cisterns were not good.
When did he become mayor?
I don't know exactly. It must have been about 1910, I imagine, sometime around that time.
Was Gretna a city then?
No, it wasn't incorporated until, well, yes, it was a city when he was mayor. But he had to work first to get it incorporated before they elected a mayor, and that's when he did all of his work. And he was on the staff of Governor Hall, and he had pull with him that he used to get Gretna incorporated. But in the meantime, he had to have somebody to run for mayor. And I remember he would come home saying how he was working with Mr. Ehret to get him to run for mayor. And when Mr. Ehret accepted, he came home so excited and so happy about it. So Mr. Ehret ran, and the city was incorporated.
Well, you see, my daddy worked for the brewery 33 years, selling beer for the brewery as the agent on this side of the river. You couldn't buy a barrel of beer unless you bought it from here. Then he owned the ice factory. You couldn't buy ice unless you bought it in Algiers. So he worked for the brewery 33 years. And when Prohibition came in 1920, he lost his job. So he was in politics, you see. Years ago, he was a police German for Marreros in the 1800s. And he served about 2 terms. That's 8 years that he served as a police German. And then in 1913, he was elected by Luther E. Hall as governor for the city of Gretna. And he served as mayor for about 7 years. And then later, it's around John M. Parker's time when he was running for governor. He ran for assessor. And I think he served 2 terms as assessor. And so after that, well, he died in the time of being assessor. He died in about around 1937, my daddy did.
Why was he in so many different political jobs? He liked it?
Well, the people liked him. He was a good man. He was a man who was never in jail, was never in trouble. And the only sport that he had was hunting. He used to like hunting. And he had a summer home down the bayou where he used to go to and go hunting and everything else like that. And he was a very, very liberal man. And at that time, in his time, and I remember that, he used to pay about $2,000 worth of poll tax. You had to buy a poll tax for $1 to vote. He spent a lot of money on poll tax. When he was mayor, for the first 3 years, he didn't get no salary at all, because he was a businessman, you see. He was getting money from the ice factory, you see. I'll tell you what he was getting. He was getting about $5,000 a year out that ice factory between the 3 of them. It was Judge Rosner, Samuel Brothers, and him. And he was getting about $5,000 a year out that ice factory, and $5,000 was plenty of money. And then, at the time that was going on, a man was making about $1.50 a day. That was big money. Now, when I started to work, I started to work for 20 cents an hour at the Southern Cotton Oil Company. I started up there when I was 17 years old.
Do you remember any of your father's political campaigns when you were young?
Well, yeah, I used to go around to him and different things, and talk to different people. And
what were they like?
Well, it's quite a difference in what it is today, you know what I mean? And the people said was rich or something like that, you could depend upon it. But today you can't depend upon it. As soon as you turn your back, that's it, that's out. When they formed a ticket to get Marrero out of office, they got him out of office, you see? And Marrero was something like Huey Long. If you wasn't with him, and you was with him, and you went against him, he's going to get you. And you would be gotten too by it. That's how he was. He'd get rid of you. So what my daddy done, they formed a ticket. Frank Clancy was the clerk of court. My daddy was the assessor. J.B. Downhow was the sheriff. And that while that election was going on, Professor Gosseron, he was a school teacher at the time, and then later he got to be a lawyer. So he come down with a check for $5,000 and offered to my daddy, and he says, the sheriff sent me down, Jack, to give you this check and take your name off of that ticket and get back right. My daddy told Gosseron, he said, you bring the check back to the sheriff. I don't want his money. And they beat the ticket. And that's how he got to be the assessor. So the term come on again to run, he run for assessor on the second term, and he won. And what Frank Clancy done, he didn't come back as a clerk of court. He come back as a sheriff, you see, and that ticket won again, you see. And I believe Clancy served about 24 years as sheriff of Jefferson Parish, you see. That's how it went.
First mayor for the city of Gretna was John Ehret. And John Ehret, at that time, had served 2-year terms instead of 4-year term. And Ehret served 4 years, and then Dr. Gelb came in and served 4 years.
What were some of the things that your father wanted to do in government?
Well, most of all, he wanted the prisoners to be fed properly. He felt that the people in power were not using the, I shouldn't be talking about these things maybe, but it's what I remember, that because he used to let my sister and me go up to the jail on a Saturday to take food to various people. And he felt that the people in power were not using the money to feed the prisoners, that they were really pocketing the money. And that was the first thing that he was starting on. I remember that as a very small child.
How would you like your father to be remembered? As a doctor or as a mayor?
As a doctor. Because to me, he was, the minute my father came in the house, no matter what was wrong with me or with my children later in life, the minute he walked in the house, I was at ease and peace. I knew he was going to take care of them. And when I moved away, that was the greatest thing. I missed him terribly as a doctor. And I think he was a good doctor, but I know there were times when he neglected his practice for politics.
What would you say about him as a politician?
I think he was a very, very honest, upright politician, always working for the good of the people. I truly believe that. I know it.
Do you have any memories as a child of any of his political campaigns?
Yes, I used to go to political rallies, and some of them were pretty hot and hard fought. We used to march in them. Of course, I was an ardent supporter of his.
I would imagine so. Can you describe one of them? What were they like?
Well, they used to have torchlight parades, I think, and we'd have lanterns, if I remember correctly. But my memory isn't too good, but I remember that they'd always pulled buntings around the speaker stand, and I'd always try to get as close as possible.
Politics was real rough before my time. It quieted down. You take when the Marreros were in, that was really rough. The Marreros and the languages, and I'm talking, that's, well, in 1913, in that age, it started. And it was rough. It was dog eat dog, you know, you fight.
What kind of things went on?
Well, it got to real fighting. In fact, I can remember one time, we had an old gentleman in Gretna. The old man Marrero had a long beard. And somebody told him, he says, let's cut that beard off that old man. And he did it, and he went to the penitentiary for it, but he cut his beard off. But
why did people feel so strongly about it?
in politics,
Yeah.
they just wanted the power. In fact, at one time, the first sheriff we had for Gretna was Marrero, Louis Marrero, and he was a sheriff, and his son was a clerk of court. So it's just power.
Now, Marrero doesn't sound like a German name.
No.
Was there any conflict between the German people and the other people?
I think there was, but that's before my time. But before what I read about, I think there was some conflict in that.
What did your father tell you about politics?
Well, he went in politics, like I said, in 1916, and well, I was just born then. I didn't know too much, and he didn't talk too much about politics, but they tell me it was rough. They'd fight.
Were you telling me that it was the Marrero gang came, shot up your daddy's house?
Yeah, right. They want to get rid of him, you see. Yeah.
What did they do? They came at night while you all were sleeping?
That happened about 3 o'clock in the morning. It happened. You see, that Marrero had that done. Like I told you, if you wasn't with him, he was something like you along, he'd get you, you see, and everything else. And so there was 3 fellas that come there and wanted to kill him. See, they shot a bunch of holes through the door, you know. But my daddy didn't come out right away, you see.
Did he not like your dad because you all were newcomers and they'd been in politics a long time?
No, but he didn't receive that check. That's why they was trying to kill him. You understand? That's why they was trying to kill him, you see. That's the Christ's truth.
So he wouldn't be bought out of the election because he was too honest, and so they tried to kill him since he wouldn't be
He gave the
bribed.
check back. Professor Gospel wanted to give him the check, and he wouldn't accept the check. He said, give it back to the sheriff. I don't want that check. He said, that's the ticket we running on.
So they came and shot up the house.
Yeah, shut up all the door in the house and everything. But there's one man got shot, I believe, that night there, you know. I believe he got shot. He got shot.
Politics was rough.
Yeah, but if my daddy would, you see, he had a little side gallery from the house, come out on the side gallery, and the fence run along there, a feather edge fence about 6 foot high. If he'd have come out there and stuck his head over that gallery like that, they'd have killed him.
Why did Dr. Gelb serve so many terms? Was he a good doctor or a good mayor?
He was both. He was both. He was a good mayor. He was for the interests of the community at heart, and that's I think why he kept coming back. He thought he could do more than the mayor that was in there, but he was conscientious. He was, and as his daughter said, he was also the coroner for the parish, and he was really a good worker.
What did your dad teach you was the job of a man in political life?
Well, he always tried to be fair with everybody, and I think he wanted me to do that. No, so show sides one way or the other. I mean, judge a case on its merits, and that's it. I mean, this partiality, little influence, he didn't believe in that.
Did you?
But the thing about Dr. Gelb is that Dr. Gelb served 22 years for the City of Gretna, but he served in 4 different terms. He served 4 years, and then after that, Henry Veering went in for 2 years, and then Dr. Gelb would come back for 4 more years, and then Mr. Straley, he served 4 years, and Dr. Gelb would come back for 8 more years, and then Mayor White went in, and Mayor White's been there till Ronnie Harris come in. White was there 32 years.
What are your memories of your dad's term?
Well, he was a railroad man. He worked for Texas Pacific Railroad. He was a conductor. I think he worked on the railroad around 68 years. By the time he was 14 years old. And the time he ran for mayor, you had to have a job in Gretna or you wouldn't be able to serve. Because I think the mayor got $50 a month. He'd lose more than that on the railroad if he missed a trip. The city alderman got $5 a month. And that was the pay for the City of Gretna back in '33, and a good many years after that.
Wasn't a big paying job.
Not too big.
Why did he want to be mayor?
I guess politics, I don't know. Somebody talked him into it. My mother sure didn't want him to be mayor.
But it seems, you know, for a railroad man, it doesn't seem like a likely kind of occupation. Was he interested in politics all his life?
Well, he was into politics a little bit. I mean, he supported different ones in politics. Him himself, I don't remember him ever going out for any office or anything, but several of the politicians got him to run from the first ward. They got him to run first as an alderman, then they came back and wanted him to run for mayor. The main thing was they were trying to beat Dr. Gelb at the time in the first, for people in the second, some of the politicians in the second and third ward. And Dr. Gelb used to carry the first ward pretty much solid. So they had to get somebody from the first ward, and that's how they picked on him.
Why was Dr. Gelb such a tough opponent?
In the first ward, he was real tough.
Why?
He'd done a lot of charity work. He was a good doctor, you know. And I'm telling you, they didn't have, I think, the only other doctor they had in McDonaldville was Dr. Odom. Of course, he was in politics too. But both of them did a lot of charity work. And probably Dr. Gelb had done a little more than he did. He was well liked in the first ward.
What do you think was your father's accomplishments while he was in office?
Well, during his administration, they built the city water plant and the fire alarm system, extended the water main. That's about it.
He was mayor at a tough time, you know, the Depression and going into World War II.
Yeah, there's no money. There was no money in the city of Gretna at the time that he went in as mayor. The city of Gretna was in pretty much debt like all the cities were at that time. None of them had any money. And money was scarce. It was really right at the Depression time, you know, coming on.
How old were you when your father was mayor?
1933, the first time, I was about 21.
Did you get involved in his campaigns?
A little bit, not too much. I wasn't too interested in politics. Because you needed money to be in politics, and I was more interested in trying to make money somewhere. But I lived mostly in McDonoughville, down in the first ward. And that was the old railroad town, started there by J. Gould, the Texas Pacific Railroad. And they ran as far as, well, their first track was to West Wego, and then from West Wego they extended. I think they wound up in El Paso. That was as far as the TP Railroad went. And he donated the ground for the old firehouse down there in McDonoughville. They used to call it Gould's Bar after Jay Gould. Then they called it McDonoughville. And most of the McDonoughville people still call it McDonoughville. They won't call it Gretna yet, the old timers.
Jay Gould was the Wall Street big shot who owned the railroad.
Right.
Was there some reason, I mean, for getting the trains across the river? Was that a good location to do it?
Well, the ships used to come into New Orleans, and I guess they did a lot of their freight business out of New Orleans on the trains. I imagine that was really because they settled here, and then Southern Pacific Railroad settled right down in Algiers.
So it wasn't so much a matter of getting the trains across the river as it was of the ships would bring it in?
Well, most of the ships docked on the New Orleans side, though. So they had to get cars over to the New Orleans side to get them into McDonoughville. So that's why they ran the transfer boat from New Orleans to McDonoughville. And they had the judge tell why they used to run grips from Gretna to across the ferry here. It would take the railroad with passenger cars an hour and something to get from Gretna to New Orleans, where they could do it catching a ferry boat, catching a streetcar. They could do it in about 20, 25 minutes downtown New Orleans. So they save an hour.
Well, Gretna then was a big railroad town and kind of a gateway to the west.
Yeah.
I never realized that.
Well, that's how they called it West We Go.
Heard that story about West Wego, yeah. Anything special you remember about growing up in Gretna? You would have been growing up roughly around the time it became a city, or you were born around the time it became a city.
It was incorporated in 1913. No, I was too young then. I wouldn't remember that.
But what was it like to grow up in Gretna?
Well, you just grew up with your friends around there. You made all your own deals. Nobody did anything for the younger group then like they do today, you know. We used to build our own ballparks, our own diamonds, cut our own grass. I remember one thing they done for us. They put a flagpole right in the middle of second base.
Who did that?
We don't know, but one of the boys cut it down that same night. We had a ballpark there. It's the only place we had to play ball, and they used to call it Tebow's Green, which was the old Mexico Square. And Tebow named it after himself, I think. I think he named it Tebow's Green, but it was Mexico Square, and that's where we had our ballpark there. But that was the only thing they done was put a flagpole in the middle of second base. But outside of that, and the bunch from McDonoughville, I'd say about 40% of them bummed in Algiers, the younger group. There was a few came to Gretna, but a good many of them went into Algiers in New Orleans Parish.
What kind of ways were there of getting in trouble?
Oh, mostly the fights were around the younger bunch. There was nothing too bad, you know. There wasn't no dope, a little alcohol maybe, but that's about as far as it went. And
hard-working kind of town?
Yeah. Most of the people are hard-working, yeah. They all owned their own home down in McDonoughville and took pretty good care of them. They still do today, the old-timers down there. They had about, I guess about 8 or 9 real German families in the area in McDonoughville. And they all went to work for the railroad.
What do you mean, real German families?
Well, I mean, they were from Germany. And pretty near every one of them went for work for the railroad because they built a shop down there. You see, and the Germans came in there, they were pretty good mechanics, I guess, and they went to work in the shop. And the younger kids, they went on the road, either flagmen or switchmen or something like that, call boys. They used to go to work at around 14 years old, 13 or 14. I know my dad said the first month when he got to be flagging crossings on Race Street in New Orleans, he got $15. He didn't think he'd ever get all that kind of money for a month.
Why did he was mayor for 8 years, why did he not run again? Was he tired of it, or?
My mother was tired of it. My mother says, if you run again, I'm leaving home. It was a lot of aggravation, mostly aggravation. You know, people calling you up, worrying you all night long about garbage not being picked up and different things. We had 2 garbage carts in Gretna. Used to pick up all of Gretna every day. Pulled about 2 mules. That was the height of the garbage in Gretna at that time. Well, we only had around, we had around 800-900 population in Gretna in the 3 wards.
The fact that World War II was starting didn't have anything to do with his not running anymore.
No, not at all. My mother's the main one why he didn't run.
Cities, like people, have their own genealogies. The families who pour their lifeblood into a city sometimes move on to other places. The city of Gretna is fortunate that its people have remained to grow with it. The result is a symbiosis of place and people, each sustaining the other. We have shared with you the city and the people who have done their growing together.